This is part one in our new series of the West Memphis 3 case. This case has been near and dear to our hearts for a long time, and in fact, 2 summers ago, my TikTok partner Carrie and I even visited the area. This is a case that we've been wanting to cover for a long time, and there are a lot of parts to it, so let's get into it. On May 5th of 1993, 3 young 8-year-old boys were brutally murdered. 3 troubled local teens were eventually convicted of the crime, and they spent 18 years in prison until they were eventually freed due to an Alford plea agreement. To this day, this case remains open. Join us as we dive into this case, and as always, we know you guys know your stuff. So if you haven't already, hit that follow button and join in the discussion in the comments. Stevie Branch was the son of Pamela and Terry Hobbs. His mom had married Terry, who was actually his stepfather. Stevie was a well-liked second grader. He had many friends and was well known for his bright blonde hair. He had a younger half-sister, Amanda, and reportedly, just before the murder, Stevie's grandfather had given him a new bicycle. The day of the boys' disappearance, Stevie returned home after school with his mom and his sister Amanda. Pam had given him permission to ride his bicycle with his friend, but she was asking that he returned home at 4:30 as she had a shift at a local restaurant called Catfish Island at 5 o'clock. Stevie still had not returned home by the time Terry had to take Pam to work that evening. When Terry returned home, he said he never saw Stevie at any other point during that evening. Terry's claim has been disputed by several neighbors who say that they witnessed Terry calling Stevie back into the residence that evening around 6:30. It's also been well criticized that Stevie's family chose not to make any kind of a statement to law enforcement immediately following the discovery of the boys' murders. Michael Moore often went by the name Mike. He was the son of Todd and Diane Moore, and he had an older sister. He was well known, he had lots of friends, he was involved in Cub Scouts, and was known as a natural-born leader. On the day of the boys' disappearance, Michael ran over to Stevie's house after school. It was a warm day, and the pair were planning to ride bicycles. Now, the last known sighting of Michael varies a little from that of the other 2 boys. Neighbor Chris Wall recalls seeing Stevie and Chris around 7 p.m. that evening, but does not recall Michael being with the pair. Christopher Byers lived with his mom, Melissa, and his stepdad, John Mark Byers. He also had an older half-brother named Ryan Clark. It's unknown if Chris went right home after school that day, but he did show up around 3:30, according to Pam, to Stevie's house to play with the boys. Pam says the other 2 boys had already taken off through the neighborhood, and that Chris actually stayed and watched television for a short time with Stevie's younger sister, Amanda. He left Stevie's house sometime around 4 o'clock and had at some point met up with the other 2 boys as the 3 were later seen together throughout the neighborhood. He was spotted playing in the street by his stepdad, who made him come back to the house, and he had to clean up some of the carport as punishment. When his stepdad left the house that evening, his mom, Melissa, allowed him to go back out to play with the other 2 boys, and she says she last saw him around 5:45 that evening. So there's a lot to dig into on this case. Like I said, this is part 1. Give us a follow. We're going to keep covering all the aspects of this case, and there's a lot to unpack.